It's deers, it's coons, it's possums. You never seen them do that in your life.
Morning. Glad to see everybody this morning. I know we have some who are under the weather, but in light of the wonderful weather around us, it is a good day. We'll go ahead and begin with a word of prayer, and then if you want to open your Bible to Psalm 139, Psalm 139 is where we're going to utilize our study this morning. We'll ask, Miles isn't here. Brother Jim, can you lead us in a word of prayer?
Study the Word and learn more about the things that we need to study the Word and to do to help further our kingdom and bring others into it. We pray, Father, for the ones that are sick, could be here this morning, pray that you be with them and to be your will to heal them, be with the ones that are traveling also, and keep them safe on their journey and back home once again. So thankful, dear Heavenly Father, for Son Jesus, who came and suffered and died to fill death on the cross so we might have forgiveness of our sins. Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for your love for us, your patience you have with us, and we pray, Father, as we're trying to teach others, that we'll have patience ourselves in trying to teach them. Heavenly Father, we ask that each and every one of us will conduct ourselves in a Christian manner out in the community, so that others will know that we're the child of God. But Heavenly Father, we pray that we'll each realize that we do things that be contrary to your will, and we just leave things undone. And when we realize that we've made a mistake, that we'll come to you and ask for forgiveness of those things. This is a prayer in Jesus Christ's Lord and precious name.
Amen. Thank you. There's a story of a child who went to Bible class, and from his class, they were asked to bring things into the classroom to show how much they loved their mom and dad. Well, one kid in particular took this assignment to heart. He went home, and in his playroom, he decided that his favorite toy would be really good to bring in to show how much he loved his parents. But as he was collecting it on the way to Bible school, he realized, maybe I should bring my favorite food too. My toy is pretty good, but I want to bring my favorite food too. So he got his cereal, his favorite cereal that he liked, and he got a little carton of milk because his parents were trying to teach him how to make his own cereal. So he brought some milk and cereal and his favorite toy, and he was almost out the door, and he said, you know what, I need to bring my favorite clothes. So he got his favorite jacket, and he got his favorite shoes, he got his favorite wear-unders, and he got all of his favorite things he liked to wear. And he had a little suitcase, so when he came into the classroom, he had a suitcase, he had a little picnic basket, and then he had his favorite toy in his hand, and he was so proud of himself. And the teacher was like, what'd you bring all this stuff for? It's like, well, you asked us to bring something we thought could really say how much we love our parents. Well, all my toys, everything that I own, it came from my parents. I can't really say I love you more than my favorite toy. But then I started thinking, I wear my clothes all the time. So I decided to bring my favorite clothes to show how much I really love my parents and what they've given me. But then, what about this food here? Are you going to feed the class? Oh, no. My parents always give me my favorite cereal, my favorite milk is strawberry milk. And I love to just eat that with my cereal. And the teacher's like, well, why couldn't you just bring one thing? And the kid just kind of stopped there for a while and said, well, if I had to tell you in every way why I love my parents, I think if I just show you my favorite toy, my favorite food, and my favorite clothes, that covers everything, doesn't it? If we think about Psalm 139, the word every comes to mind. In every way possible, in every time possible, and in everything possible, God knows us. He knows us better than we know ourselves sometimes. I didn't really like preparing this lesson because the more I kept thinking about it, I was like, God, you know too much about me. But I'm glad He does. I'm glad He knows everything about me. Because there's times where I fail to see who I truly am, and God truly sees who I am to be. But sometimes I fail to see what God requires of me to be because I tend to think maybe I have arrived sometimes, or maybe just where I am in life, I find myself fogged up for some reason where I can't really see the reality that I live in. Psalm 139 is a display of a heart that truly contemplates every aspect of God. But not really every aspect of God per se, but how God examines every aspect of His own creation, mankind. So this morning as we look through Psalm 139, I want us to take into consideration what are the different ways that God examines us, but also in the different means that He uses to test us, to really make sure whether or not we're being honest with ourselves and being honest with others at the same time. I'm not going to preach this morning's lesson. Give me a second. This is not the right thing. Does anybody use any electronic Bibles, or we stick to the book? Oh, okay. Okay, don't try using electronic and teach at the same time. It does not work that great. But I'm slowly getting better. Anybody ever said, I'm not that great at using this computer stuff, this technology stuff? Yeah, I'm feeling the same right now. I know things, but I don't know all things. Okay, Psalm 139, let's go ahead and begin with verse number 1. Oh, that's wonderful. No notes. Okay, so we begin in verse 1. I want you to notice the psalmist is going to take three different perspectives about God. Verse 1 through 6, verse 7 through 12, and 13 through 16. Now, these three different things I'm going to find display a different aspect of what God knows about you and I today. Notice beginning in verse 1, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. And you understand my thought afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word on my tongue, but behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You have hedged me behind and before, and you laid your hand upon me. And such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, and I cannot attain it. So where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there too. And if I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light about me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, as yet there were none of them. Now, when I break down all three of these sections, When I break down all three of these sections, notice beginning verse 1 to 6, I am looking at quite literally, God understands everything about me. Now, I've already said that before, but I want you to notice to what extent He knows me. You've searched me and known me. The idea for searching is this idea of an exhaustive examination. Almost like we talk about with Acts 17:11, the Bereans were more noble than those in Thessalonica in that they searched the Scriptures daily. That's quite literally. They're looking back and forth, but also they were looking at every angle possible at the text. They were asking questions to help provoke their thought. Well, with God, it's that same thing. God takes you and I, and He sets you there, and He says, okay, I really want to figure out every single aspect about you. So you think about the things that you like and the things that you don't like. God already knows those things. You think about the worst day of your life and even the best day of your life. God really knows truly what your worst and best day will be ever. But in everything He searches. He tests the things that you're not willing to test. But then He also tests all those things that you say that you've tried your hardest. And He really evaluates that statement. Did you try your hardest? Were you lethargic or were you lax in trying to seek out the answers for those things? Or maybe you were extremely diligent in trying to find those things. The idea of God searching me. He has painstakingly, if such a thing exists, gone to the library of your life, and He has compared it with everything that He knows to know, which is all things. And He looks through the books, and He's written the book on you. Now, He has written the book, but He's written your book. Notice in verse number 16, your eyes saw my substance, yet being unformed, and in your book they all were written. Every single day of my being, every day where I could not actually focus on God, or every day where I dared not even think one thing about God, or the day when I began to realize that I have broken God's heart, or the day I realized I need to respond to God's invitation. God has seen all those. God has seen my best days. He's seen my worst days. He's seen me when I'm trying. He also sees me behind closed doors. I think of Matthew 16, first off, in my prayers that nobody else has heard, but He's heard all those. In fact, He even sees the possibility. What if He gives me those things? Where will that take my life? Or why has God kind of left my life where it is? Why has He restricted certain things? Or why has He allowed certain things? Or why is He doing this and someone else? God has seen it all. The idea of searching is He has done the exhaustive work. Do you find yourself exhausting? Don't answer that. But He has done the exhaustive work where He knows every single thing. In fact, it's almost like if the angels in heaven and God were watching a reel of your life. Now, I'm not talking about real life. That is real life. But I'm talking about those old things where the projector kicks up and then the lights go on and then you get the music and then it's the life of and it has your name. God is there with the angels and He says, hey, check this out. Check this. This is a really good part. Shh. This is important. Keep this in mind. And He sees everything. Now, I want to think about the depth of what that means. If He has searched me and exhaustively has exposed every aspect of my life, I want you to notice the psalmist would continue in verse 2 and following, you know my sitting down and my rising up. Someone was talking about the wonders of old age this morning. When you sit down, it hurts. When you stand up, it hurts. But this is not about the pain that you feel as you get older or even do really dumb stuff in your younger years. You know when I go to rest, but you also know when I am rested and I get up and go about my day. Now, we have a thought, or normally, if I don't know if you're like me in this regard, when I start the morning, I like to have a plan. I do not like it when that plan goes south or that those plans completely change. Now, I can be flexible, but not to the extent that nothing I had planned that day gets accomplished, and I'm there at the end of the day going, what happened? Did I even wake up? And then I go back to bed and try again tomorrow. I don't know if you've had those days, but I hate those days. I really do. But God has contemplated those days where I had a plan. He's even contemplated some of the days where I had no plan, and I thought I may have had a plan, but really it was no plan, and I ended up doing nothing the whole day. But the way that I go about my day, it would tell me, verse number 2, you know me when I rest, you know me when I'm well rested up, but also verse number 2, you understand my thoughts afar off. I don't know if you've ever stood on a mountain ridge and you can see out above everything. You see over all the valleys, you see all the trees, especially if you're way, way up in the mountains, and you can just see straight down the hillside. But as you look out, it's as far as the eyes can see. Now, I want you to imagine, instead of viewing nature all around you, God stands up on the pinnacle of your life and He says, I can see everything you've ever thought, everything you've ever did, everything you're going to do. I see that over here. But then I also see the thoughts that you have because you're already past this time. I see how you reflect back on those moments. I see how you respond in light of those trials or that test or whatever situation of life. I've seen how you responded. And it's like God sees every aspect of my being. Now, notice verse number 2. It says at the end, you understand my thought afar off. Pause. Do you still have questions about how some things in your life are going to play out? Because if you do, you need this God. Because this God already sees the end of that. He actually understands the full breadth of this. And sometimes I don't like to admit this being young, but I think that's something we all kind of struggle with when we're younger. I don't like coming to the conclusion I don't have the answer. I hate that. It eats at me. Now, being human is realizing I don't have all the answers. But when I read the ending of verse number 2, you get my thoughts. This tells me God is in a place where I cannot be in the present moment, but I can obtain at some point, which then again, maybe in the present moment, I finally have the eureka moment and I get what God has been trying to tell me the whole time. I finally understand. But that's the God who knows everything. He knows me when I lay down to sleep. He knows me when I get up from resting, and He understands my thought afar off. Now, notice in verse number 3, this is how He gets me. You comprehend my path. Why is Ethan going this way? Why is Ethan struggling with this? Why do I keep seeing this reoccurring in Ethan's life? God's already gone down all those paths. Now, the idea of comprehend, this is someone who has seen, okay, observation number 1, observation number 2, observation number 3. We call this the scientific hypothesis, I believe, is what they call it, the scientific method. You have a hypothesis and you test that hypothesis and you keep testing things until you come to a conclusion, something that is observable. It's telling me God has taken my life and He has seen what actually is, oh, here's the reason, here's the reason. He gets me, even when I don't get me. He comprehends my path and my lying down. He understands why I stop where I stop. Now, we'll come back to that idea here in a moment, but also acquainted with all my ways. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I've looked into that. I get why they're doing what they're doing. Now, there's a difference between God understanding why I do something and God allowing me to do something, just accepting it and saying, well, that is how it is. Sometimes we build a false reality of the world around us because sometimes our emotions or sometimes conflict just kind of clouds our judgment where we're not actually seeing the full picture. I've seen some guys in the past, some women in the past, who have undergone a certain situation in their life, and then they become highly skeptical towards a lot of things that deal with that specific situation, and they're thinking, maybe this is God's way of signaling that I'm going through something in my life. Well, I don't really know whether or not that is the case. It may just be because they're going through a certain situation that those particular traits that match their problem, it's just, it speaks out to them more, and they're paying attention to that more. You ever wonder why when you buy a certain car, suddenly everybody has one? It's because you're more attuned to actually focusing on that. God looks beyond all that and He says, I see the full picture. So see the God whom the psalmist is describing as the one who knows everything about me. The one who, verse 1, comprehensively, exhaustively has looked through every book through heaven, and He knows me. Verse number 2, He has seen every path that I will ever make, and He gets why I do it. Doesn't mean that He accepts why I do it, but He gets why I do it. Verse number 3, because He has tested my ways. If someone were to ask Him, hey, can you tell me more about why Ethan did blah, 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 or why Ethan said blah, 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 or why Ethan thought blah, 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 God has the answer. Because God knows everything about me. Notice verse number 4 and following. There is not a word on my tongue, but behold, O Lord, you know it all together. Even before I speak, you know what I'm going to say. Now, we find that annoying, or at least I found people find that really annoying in relationships. You're just going to say what I'm going to say. Just let me express myself. Well, God already knows it. Well, then what's the point of prayer? Well, God wants to make sure you are aware that you need Him. Just because God knows everything doesn't mean that God doesn't want to hear His children or hear His creation and their needs. But not just you know all things beforehand. Verse 5, you have hedged me behind and before and laid your hand upon me. For such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. Now, how does God know absolutely everything about me? Verse number 6, the answer is not, well, He's just all-knowing, and that answers it. That doesn't tell me how He knows everything about me. The Bible just says there are some things that God knows about me I may never get to know in my lifetime, even if I look beyond myself, because knowing yourself is hard enough, knowing others. If it came down to it, I will not have enough time in this life to fully understand why people are people. It is what it is. So when I start looking at, okay, can I know everything there is to know about people? Verse number 6 gives me the answer. You're never going to figure that out. Don't try to aim for that. So when I look at the God of all things, my first every word is the God of everything about me. Now, verse 7 through verse number 12, this is the God who knows everywhere I am. Notice verse 7, where can I go from your Spirit? Now, some people will say this is the Holy Spirit, but I think this is a Spirit that is holy. This is just God Himself is trying to figure out, where are you? You think of that question back in Genesis 3. Did God have to ask Adam, where are you? Or did He already know? He already knew. Now, when we get to Genesis 3, that's kind of the point of the text. The word God saw, God saw, God saw, it's not in chapter 3. How can the God who saw everything and said everything was good, He even knew things outside of the garden, the state of their well-being, but then when it came to pinpointing the Garden of Eden, suddenly He just did not see that man was going to mess up? It's not the case. The text is not about what God does and does not see. The text is about what does mankind see when they go through their sin trials. Now, I notice this God, your Spirit. Where can I go where your Spirit can't find me? Or can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, quite literally the skies, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, in the lowest parts of all things, this is not literally what we know as the final resting place, but if I make my place in a place of death, that's not really a good sentence to walk in on, is it? If I make my bed in the lowest parts of the earth, behold, you are there. If I take on the wings of the morning, think about how the sun just goes up, 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 up. If I ride like Icarus through the sky, you still see me. Even if I'm in space, you see me. And dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, miles upon tons of pressure on my life. You're still there. Even verse 10, your hand shall, even there in heaven, in the lowest parts, highest parts, your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. Personification, kind of, in verse number 10, using the hands of God. Normally, if it emphasizes right hand, it's signifying this is God's good arm. Now, does God have a bad arm? No. But normally in ancient lore, ancient writings, if it emphasizes hold me by your right hand, it's talking about your dominant hand. God uses His good side, everything about Him, to lead me and guide me. Notice verse number 17. If I say surely the darkness, so maybe it's not about height or maybe it's not about distance. What if it's about what God can see and can't see? Anybody here have problems seeing at night? You're not alone. We're not made to see at night. That's why we have this thing called light. But notice verse 17. If I say surely the darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light about me. How is that? Verse 10. When I find myself, we sing that song sometimes, we don't really sing it that often here, but keep me safe till the storm passes by. It begins in the dark of the midnight. I have oft hid my face till the storms all around me seem to show your hiding place. You know, where are you through my trials and through my dark times? When God has me, even the darkest night I see through. Notice again the term in verse number 11. If I say, surely the darkness shall fall upon me, even the night shall be light about me. When I look at how God looks at life, then it doesn't matter what I go through. It may not be that I fully understand everything about it, but I do know this. The God who knows me is also the God who can lead me everywhere through life. That's through the good times and the bad. Notice verse 12. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. I see the God who knows everything about me, and I see the God regardless of where I am in life, location-wise, where I am in life, age-wise, where I am in life, height or depth-wise, or where I am in life, good times, okay times. This is not okay times, and I feel like death times. God still guides me. But there's something else emphasized here. Notice again, verse number 6. If I try to know everything about everyone, I just can't. But I do know this in light of my life, verse number 10 and 11. If I can find God's hand, I can find His strong hand. I can make it through anything life throws at me. Now keep that in mind because we're going to need that in the back half of this text. We got one more every to cover. Verse number 13 through 16. Every time, everything, everywhere, every time. Notice verse 13. You formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Yet your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed. We're looking at the birth process. Now, some people will take this text and say this is talking about how we can know when conception takes place. This is showing the process of conception. This is not giving me more information other than that. What it is telling me is regardless through that process, the psalmist is saying, that was me. That was me. That was me. God saw me. God saw me in a moment where not even my parents knew that I was there, but in secret I was formed. This was not something done before everyone's eyes, but even in the act of how life comes to being, however that process works. Scripture doesn't give us that much info. But what I do find is that even in that process, the psalmist is saying, God, you saw me even there. Now, what scientist has ever been able to say, here's where the soul enters? It can't. There's some thoughts, but that's not what this text is saying. Notice at your and mine very entrance into life, God saw it. Verse 15, my frame was not hidden for you, and I am skillfully wrought, or when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written. Now what's the all? The days fashioned for me. I don't know if you've ever had the want at some time in your life, but some people will say, I just wasn't born at the right time. Well, according to this text, I could look at Daniel 4 as a side text, that God has appointed kings in their specific place and in their time. If I am where I am, God has a reason why He has put me there. Now, I don't know that reason. I'm not going to know that reason all my life. But what I do know through this is that in your book, all my days were fashioned for me, as yet there were none of them. This tells me, just like any good author, they think about, okay, what's the book I want to write? Except this book, part of it, this book in particular was written by God, for us. But my life, okay, God has written certain parts of that book. But I want you to look at 2 Corinthians chapter 3 for a moment. Hold your finger there at Psalm 139, 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Just because God has written some moments of my book, I wonder if there are moments in my life where I tried to steal the pen from God. Notice in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 that even Paul says, beginning in verse 1, if you have given yourself to God, then we should know how this story plays out. Notice in verse 1, 2 Corinthians 3. Do we begin again to commend ourselves, or do we need, as some others, epistles of commendation to you, or letters of commendation from you? You are our epistle written in our hearts. Note this, known and read by whom? All men. You don't have to be an avid book lover or an avid reader in order to read people. The way that you act, the way that you respond, the way that you think and even interact with others is a telltale sign of whom you belong to. Now, what's interesting is when I look at Psalm 139 and I see that God has fashioned all of these things in His book, it should be the case that the more that I align my life to the teachings of Jesus, that the things that God has written suddenly become the very things that I'm doing. It's like God has actually written out how my life is to be, and He has. And what this text is saying is that God looks at those parts that He says, I had a part in that. I had a part in that. Oh, that's good. That's good. Oh, that's good. That's going to influence this book over here. And He goes to someone else's book, and He opens up that book, and He sees your name, how you influence other people. And He says, oh, but that's not the only one. And He starts pulling out other books off His shelf, and He lays them all there, and He says, do you see how one story can change all these others? But this is not about that. He puts away the other books. Psalm 139, verse 16. Even before anyone knew I was going to be, before I even knew I was going to be, God saw me. He saw you. And He wrote your whole life down. And He says, this is how I'm seeing everything's going to play out. I don't like how this chapter ends. This is not good. This chapter, we're going to keep recalling this through life as we keep going. See chapter See chapter. Ooh, but this is a good chapter. This is going to be the last time in their book we have a callback to a former chapter. Now from here, it changes. If you know of a God who knows everything about you, knows everywhere you'll ever be, have been, could be, and even any time of your life when you could care less about God, when you were caring more about God, when you cared a lot about God, or when God was the last thing you wanted on your mind, God sees it all. Every is the word for this chapter. The God who knows all things didn't just make all things, but He knows all things about me. Now I pause and wonder, what are some things about myself I don't know yet? But God sees it. He knows it. Now, is there a way, before we read the next part of this, is there a way that we can... anybody ever tried to predict the future before? To some extent we have. We do it all the time with our gas tank. Is that true? Is that true? I think I can make it this far, and then it doesn't work, or sometimes it does, and we like to calculate things. We're fortune tellers of sorts in our gas tanks. But if I really want to come close to, okay, if God were making a prediction, and it's never going to be something that's just like, I'm going to throw something out there and it may or may not happen. There are some conditional statements through the Bible. God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish. Now the absolute is that God sent His only begotten Son. The next part, whosoever believeth in Him, let's say that I do, which tells me not everyone will. But now we're looking at a smaller circle. What about those who do believe in Him? Should not perish. That tells me even all those who give their life to Jesus, some of those won't even make it because of their choices. God knows all predictions, but there are some things He leaves up to you and I. Now, how can we make sure that the things that God has promised us, how can we make sure that it's not like I think it's maybe a 70% chance this will happen in my life? How can I make sure that those things that God has said, this absolutely will happen for you, how can I make sure it happens all the time? Okay, listen carefully to what I'm asking. The things that God has promised you and I, eternal life, blessings in heaven, blessings through Jesus, entrance into His family. I'm not talking about evangelistic efforts of trying to bring others to Jesus. There's not a guarantee that you can force or God will force to change their heart. They've got to make that choice. We're not talking about those things. I'm talking about the things God has promised. This will happen. How can I be assured that it will always happen the way God says it will happen in my life? If I'm obedient. Notice in the following verses, there are 3 different things that I find the psalmist is going to emphasize. To go back to verse 6, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Since I can't know everything about everyone, then what can I know at least, or try to get as much information as possible? Well, it's about God. How can I have a light through the night? Because I have God's strong hand. Well, I've got to know something about God in order to have those things. Even verse number 16, the time before I was, and the time that I am, and the time beyond of my being. How can I know what kind of influence I can have? Well, verse 17 and 18 tell me that. So now we go from everything to just me. Notice verse 17 and 18, the psalmist says, how precious also are your thoughts to me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would be more in number than the sand. And when I am awake, I am still with you. It's like verse 17 and 18. It's like I'm caught in a daydream. I'm just lost in my thought, thinking about how much God knows about me, and all the wonderful thoughts He presents through Scripture. Now, we normally sing the song, count your many blessings, name them one by one, see the amazing things that God has done. Could you ever count all your blessings? Sandy talked about that a few Wednesdays ago. No. If your blessings are less than the number of sands, grains there are, maybe you're looking at blessings wrong. But what about the thoughts of God? The idea is that they're endless. You can keep going and going and going. Do you see the contrast on how verse 1 to 16, there is a definite definition of who I am, what my ways are. I'm pretty easy to read according to God. But for me to read God, there is no end to that search. This is true, talking about lives that are stolen before their time. There's a lesson that I'm working on, but it's not going to be till October. I'm going to be focusing on different aspects of sin through the month. But one of those deal with the hands that shed innocent blood. There are lots of times where lives are ended way too soon because people do dumb stuff. If you've ever been young, you've been dumb. And even when you get older, sometimes that dumb just doesn't go away. And it dumb. If anybody here love dum-dum pops, don't raise your hand. But people don't realize that the things that they do, even when they think, well, this isn't a real human being, it's not their choice and stuff like that. Well, when I look at the God-given responsibility as a parent, God has blessed you with children. I mean, we read that a few weeks ago, that if you find a man whose quiver is filled with arrows, that is an analogy for children. The children you have in life, they are a gift from God. So use them skillfully. Use them with God's wisdom. It talks about in verse 1 there that if the city does not set watch, if the Lord does not build the home, then those who build it in vain. And if the Lord does not guard that city will be taken over. But it's in reference to the home. If the home is not raised the way that God had intended the home to be raised, then there's complications. But what if we're even at the very beginning stage of parenthood? I think there is a term that we do need to take back, and I feel like the world has turned it into a phrase that is negative: planned parenthood. Now, I understand sometimes things happen and it wasn't as you planned. But parenting should be something, in light of the marriage relationship, that is something that should be planned for. God completely advocates for Planned Parenthood. What will our children be when they grow up? I'm not talking about occupation. Will they be Christians? Where will our children be long after we're gone? Let's raise them in a way so that even if we're not around, they'll be in heaven without our help. But it's making all those decisions that think of God at the very forefront of everything, rather than forfeiting God until you get in the middle of the process. So we could look at this in the sense of people who perform abortions or commit abortion. We will talk about that in a few weeks, but I think that's a very sobering aspect to this. Think of the millions of billions of lives, because it's not just something that happened today. You think about in the Old Testament, where parents would offer up their children to Molech, and Molech could be symbolic of a lot of things today, but to a false god. If we just give our children over to this, our lives will be so much better, and it will be better for them. That shouldn't have happened. Shouldn't have happened. I wonder how many books in heaven God said, there is so much, but they're not going to live it here. So when I look at Psalm 139, I consider verse 17 and 18, if my desire is to follow God, then it should be, how precious are your thoughts to me, O God. I really want you to focus on that idea, because oftentimes in like marriage relationships or even in courting relationships, people will sometimes be asked the question, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? And they do that because they care about the other person. That's just normal. But have you ever done that to God? What are you thinking? How are you feeling? How has this response in my life made you feel towards me? Now, notice in the last two verses, because we don't have time to go through the aspect of my view towards sin, that's verse 19 through 22. But the challenge should be in our prayers, and if you've not prayed this, I would pray it, but be ready if you pray it, God will exhaust every avenue. Search me, O God, know my heart, try me, and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting. The God who knows everything about me, every way about me, in every time that I've ever been, am, and will be, that's God. But sometimes I don't try to learn everything about God that I can. Sometimes I don't try to look for every way to find God in my life or everywhere. And certainly every time of my life, I have not looked after God. But the challenge is to try to be more like God as He is towards you. Praise be to God who knows every aspect of our life. So do you know every aspect of Him? Thank you for your time and attention. We'll be back in about 15 minutes for morning worship. Thank you.